What's going on, everybody? How's everyone doing? Welcome into another live stream with this guy. I'm Ian Robinson. For those of you who don't know, I actually work at Maxon. I am, well, actually, it's a senior ZBrush Solutions expert. Yeah, that's the title. Anyway, good morning. What's going on, everybody? Hey, Andrew, how you doing? Welcome in, guys. So today, you might notice that my streams are always called AMA, aka Ask Me Anything, ZBrush stream. But the topic today is fan art, and fan art's fun. Fan art's super, super cool. So we're gonna go ahead and get some music going because I'm definitely a music guy. I like to play a few little tunes while we do a thing. But yeah, so today, hey Wolf Tracker, what's going on? Ghost, hello, hello. Today we're going to be doing something pretty cool. So fun fact, I'm a Zelda fan. Actually, I don't know how many of you know that, but I am a Zelda fan. And so we are going to be making a statue. We'll see how far we can get, but we're going to be making this type of statue. One of my favorite Zelda games. Looks like Link. Spot on. One of my favorite Zelda games to this day is A Link to a Past. It's one of my favorite all time, and I've stared at this picture for too many years, and I love this statue. Like, this is just a statue waiting to happen, and I don't know if it's ever been made before, but we're going to make our version of it. So I did a little block out yesterday just to get an idea of how I want to block them out. But I'm thinking about starting from a pose. And because I already blocked them out, I think what we'll do is we'll start working on the sand monster type guy, kind of get him going, and then we'll end up trying to pose him. And we're not going to finish him today because we only got a couple hours, but we're going to get hopefully pretty far with our idea. So I'm going to go ahead and stick this guy off to the side here. And of course, if anything, if you guys, if I'm not clear enough or if the audio is not loud enough, let me know. But let's go ahead and get into it. I'm super excited. So let's see here. There we go. There we go. Perfect. Perfect. So the first thing we're going to do, and of course, guys, you can always ask me questions, all that fun stuff. But we have him right here. And I think what we want to do now is I want to pose I'm going to use these here mannequins to pose the creature. We're going to sculpt him in pose. And then from there, we're going to go ahead and then use these spheres to, I think, turn around and end up posing Link, or getting a pose for Link that then we can actually chop up this version of and get him into that pose. So right now he consists of just a few parts. So I threw together pretty much a base mesh right here. Kind of just quickly sculpted this from a sphere just to get an idea of his proportions. And then slapped on some hair and hats. Got some clothing for him. And then kind of the base block out for his boots. So pretty simple on that. That's kind of the idea of it. So really, really loose at this point. But let's go ahead and start getting at least the creature blocked out. And then we can start putting things together. Let's see. Hi Trends. What's going on? Understand if it's confidential, but is the new desktop UI on track for this year? I wish I could answer that question. I'm so glad that that's actually like a point of interest. I can't say anything on it just yet, except for the fact that it is in the works. So as soon as I'm able to tell you more, trust me, I will be able to say so. Okay. It's great stuff. So right here, let me just go ahead and save this real fast because I was working off stream. And now let's go ahead and get something more in line. So we're just going to go ahead and pick up a random sphere, make Polymesh 3D, and then let's go ahead and use Z-spheres to get a block out of this character. We can either do it in pose, or we can at least get the block out, work on him, and then bring him in, that sort of stuff. That's what makes Z-spheres super cool. So we're going to go ahead and just go to our insert, and let's get a Z-sphere. There we go. And you can't really see it right now because it is right there because I have the other thing. So now let's just, you know what? Let's actually do this. Let's do it in T-pose, and then we can always pose it later. Sometimes I think that's just the fastest way to kind of work. So we're going to go ahead and turn on symmetry. So we're going to hit X. We can hit E for scale, R for rotate, W for move, and D for draw. So we can just start drawing out a sphere. And if you press and hold shift, it will snap to the same size as the sphere that you're drawing on. And if we just go ahead and hit move, we can move this up. Now this character is going to be made of sand, essentially. So we're going to scale up this bottom one and kind of get this more like he's coming out of it. There we go. He's a really fun, kind of simplistic character. I really like that. And then let's go ahead and let's just move this up. Let's get, instead of like stacking, first I'm going to establish the main height of this character. So let's say something like this. And then what I can do, instead of drawing on top all the time, I can literally just do draw and click anywhere. There you go, say something like this. And now I can move this portion around. So this could be like his head. This could be more of like where his shoulders are. And we can kind of blow this up, something like that. There we go. And then from there, with this one selected, we can hit draw again and kind of pull this out. Yeah, say something like that. And he's lunging forward, but we're gonna, like I said, we'll kind of keep him in a T-pose here. I've seen people do amazing hard surface on ZBrush, but is it on the level of studio standards to just use ZBrush, even for hard surface? Yes. Short answer, yes, absolutely. So hard surface in ZBrush is, well, ZBrush is standard already. Like, it's a standard sculpting application, but ZBrush absolutely is a standard as well for hard surface needs. There's plenty of studios, like id Software is one that comes to mind, where they absolutely use ZBrush for hard surface stuff. In fact, Doom is one of the games I can point to that has used hard surface a lot for a ton of using ZBrush and hard surface for their games. In fact, the majority of everything you see on screen inside of Doom is 100% like ZBrush, which is awesome. So absolutely, it is more than just a sculpting application. We have a ton of hard surface stuff on there. So yes, you can. Now, there are things that other traditional DCCs that are standard do differently. And sometimes it might be easier for the artist to want to stick, quote, with inside of, say, something like Maya. So, you know, it depends on your workflow and what you're going for. Ultimately, it is up to you and what you would like to do. But yeah, for me, hard surface, ZBrush, I try to do most of my designing and work like that, hard surface or organic or inorganic inside of ZBrush. But that's a great question. Okay, so let's just go ahead and get his arms going. Now he's a sand monster, so we're just going to go ahead and just throw some base here, and then let's just pull this back. There we go. Get something that looks just like this. There we go. Now wrists kind of taper a little bit, so we're going to kind of taper that down. There we go. Perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and kind of plop up a hand shape here. I'm going to move this down like this, just to kind of keep things a little bit simplistic here. And now let's go ahead, let's draw out, he has a human hand, i.e. the sand monster we're drawing. So we're going to go ahead and try to give us a little bit of what we're looking for. There we go. Perfect. So sometimes the way I approach my hands here is I just try to keep the knuckles kind of scaled down a bit. Now you can see here that I'm affecting both one or two points of contact at the same time, and that's strictly because my brush size was just big enough. So we could do something like this. Now we want to be careful not to go too crazy with whatchamacallit, too crazy with the spheres touching each other, because that could cause conflict. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try something a little bit interesting. I'm actually going to kind of do this thing where I'm going to put this mesh kind of next to each other. If I hit A, it's going to give me a preview of how this thing can look. I'm going to be using Dynamesh with a lot of this. So hitting A gives me that preview, and I can just kind of, again, just kind of move things around so that it'll merge together. But however is comfortable for you. There we go. Smooth this down here. Okay, cool. I'm gonna just move this over. Gonna move this over. So these will be touching. That's fine. We're gonna be cleaning this up anyway, so I'm not super worried about all that. Okay. Yeah, that's looking pretty fine. So let's go ahead and at least get the fingers in there. I could also approach this differently. You know what, actually? Yeah, let's just do it. What I could do as well is just build a, quote, build a hand, right? So however you want to do it, we're just going to get this going here. And if we don't like it, we can always change things up. There you go, holding shift, grabbing this guy. Pull that finger up just a little bit. Not really too concerned about how different of a size things are. I'm just getting things blocked in there. So if they look a little funky, that's okay. Just move that. You see that? So, okay, here's a good point. So I move the sphere, boom. So this is actually caused, this was basically telling me that there's an error there, that these are too close to each other. And that's okay. When that happens, don't worry about that. If your intent is to do this, but if your intent is to not have things touching, that little indication right here where it gets a little like aliased, you want to pull that out and make sure. But in this case, it's not really going to matter too much for me, for what we're doing. There we go. Now there's a lot of like quote sculpting that's going to happen here. So I'm just trying to get something good enough. There we go. Hey, what's up, Ghost? P Ghost, how you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. There we go. Boom, boom, boom. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Happy to be streaming. Just doing some little fan art, which I think will be pretty cool. So I'm excited for that. Yeah, things are going good. How are things with you? There we go. Here, let's actually scale this down. Let's scale this guy down and scale this down. And also, too, here's a cool part. You could just go ahead and these connectors allow you to do things like actually rotate pivot points, right? So I could rotate stuff like this by trying to rotate and clicking these kind of triangle pivot points. But if you like to do things one at a time, like sometimes I do, then we'll just kind of go ahead and grab something like this. Anyway, okay. Now something that I'm going to kind of do is set myself up for how I want things. I'm going to leave, or rather pull these knuckles up just a little bit. Here we go. Say something like this. The reason why I want to pull the knuckles up is because I'm just going to carve in his palm. So that's super rounded, but we'll just carve those in. There we go. Say something like that. And then for this, let's go ahead and let's grab this guy and let's kind of bring his head into things. Yeah, say something like this. And let's just go ahead and... Now, he doesn't really have a neck, this creature, but we're going to give him a little bit of one. We're just going to kind of give him a little bit of a puffy neck here. There we go. So super simple block out here. Again, let's just hit A. Yeah. But the cool part about Z-spheres is they help give you at least a little bit of proportion control. So now here we can go ahead and see A looks pretty good. We'll go ahead and hit adaptive skin. And then this is where some of the magic is going to happen. So when I hit A, he's already, if I turn on the wireframe, he's already in Dynamesh, but he's also separated by polygroups, which is nothing wrong with that. But what I can do is if I wanted this to not be Dynamesh, then I literally can take the Dynamesh slider, slide this down to 0. And then if I do this, now he is more quad. I don't really want to do quads right now, but also 256 was way too much. So we're going to see what 128 looks like. That's still a lot. So let's go 64. Turn off preview, do it again. And now you can see this is actually a lot lower of a resolution, which is perfect for what I would like to do. So I'm going to be okay with this. So again, this is just to get kind of a quick block out. Let's go ahead and say make adaptive skin. And now we have this right here. If we open up the subtool, you see it's no longer hitting A. It's no longer a Z-sphere. And this will give us a pretty rough shape on how we can start things. Let's go ahead and save this. And now I'm going to call this LTTP underscore sand monster. There we go. We'll start with that. Yeah, very, very cool. And now let's just get the clay buildup and let's just start to go nuts with this guy. These spheres remind me of a Michelin Man. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Z spheres definitely are a lot more in line to like what I would call an armature for, um, for traditional sculpting, which when I was studying traditional sculpting under John Brown at Noman, it was actually really cool to hear his thoughts on the matter because he actually knew ZBrush pretty young when it was like early days, and they asked a lot of questions about again what could ZBrush be and offer and help with traditional sculpting, and Z spheres kind of became that a nice little mannequin, which is super cool. So yeah, there's definitely some good correlations there. Now this is actually still too dense for me, so I'm gonna hit 32. There you go. The reason why I'm saying it's still too dense is there's still too much detail there. I don't want any of that detail. I just want the ability to get in a few things. We want to lock in his traps. We want to lock in his shoulder information. I don't want any type of detail other than just getting some sort of basic anatomy happening on that. And that's going to be all in forms. And I'm literally just looking at this kind of silhouette guy. So we're just diving in here. There we go. Very cool. Let's see. Z3 up. What are the different situations of using ZBrush versus subdivision? I'm sorry for the basic questions, but I'm completely new to 3D. No, not at all. So ZBrush is a way to retopologize the mesh quickly in order to be able to have it sculptable when going into subdivisions. So there's a few different methods, and this question's like super cool. A lot of the methods with retopology, there's like two types of retopology I like to call. There's auto retopology, and then there's manual retopology. Anytime we're talking about retopology as a whole, it's really to optimize the mesh, giving you a much better experience in the sculpting world. That's kind of more in line of what you would like to have. The thing is that with ZBrush, let's say, for example, I'm satisfied with this. So I'm satisfied with this guy. With ZBrush, it's going to help you move into subdivisions really quickly. The thing is that ZBrush leads into subdivision. Subdivision is being able to work up and down in resolution for detail. So let's say I'm happy with this. This is currently Dynamesh, and notice, look, my hands are all nasty and messed. That's fine. I don't really care about those fingers. We can always build a hand here real quick. But if I wanted to clean this up, if I wanted to actually turn around and get a decent retopology quickly that's going to help me sculpturally, then I'll just clean up my poly groups, come over here, say keep groups, move it to 0, adapt the size down, hit ZBrush. Now I have nice quadded topology, and I could work with this. Now the subdivision part is for detail. When you're sculpting, you have 3 stages to work with. You have your primary first, your first forms, primary, secondary, which is more cleaning up those forms and making them more noticeable, and then tertiary, which is the very last thing, which is all about detail and high fidelity, that usually so many people get to that process super quick because it's fun. It's the most fun stage of them all. However, what subdivision will do is help support that tertiary. The secondary and tertiary forms is really where subdivisions are going to help. But if you don't have a good foundation, then you're in your primaries, then that's where you're going to suffer a little bit. So I want you to think of subdivisions as kind of like the last step moving into or in between your secondary and tertiary forms. So once I'm satisfied with this, I can still sculpt with him. But what you want to think about is when you ZBrush, you're kind of locked into the shape. You don't want to pull too much, because if I were to start pulling this way out here in left field, now I'm kind of tearing the mesh a bit, and this can get to the point where it starts looking nasty, and then I'd have to ZBrush this again just to even support that. But then it can bring up other problems, like this is now looking really choppy. So when you are working in blocking out your characters or your environments or props, it's really good to stay into like something like Dynamesh so that you're not ZBrushing a ton of times and kind of creating essentially what I would say is more problems. The last part to that question is I mentioned manual retopology. That is so that you have full optimized control of your mesh when you're moving into something like game engines or film, animation, anything like that, because now you want to be able to make sure that the flow of your topology is supporting the character itself, and it's going to look its best in an animated movement, while still keeping all the details. So that was a really like bombshell of an answer, but ultimately kind of the major takeaway here is, and this is my personal workflow, stay in something like Dynamesh like as long as possible, because this is just going to really kind of help you find your character, find your forms, and then once you're ready to move into secondary, that's when you want to start considering then, okay, now it's time to quote move into a subdivision or a remeshed subdivision workflow. So hopefully that answers your question on that. It's all about self-discovery and finding those questions. BDS, what's happening? I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. How are you doing, brother? And also, too, with that workflow question, like, check this out. So I am super low resolution right now, to the point where it's going to be really hard to capture any face details. So I just like popped in a couple holes here, but I'll tell you right now, I don't really care about his eye sockets. It was more to kind of see where things are and all that good stuff. So, and what's fun about, so like fan art right here, main topic of the day, we're just blocking out some shapes, getting some things in, some basic anatomy landmarks, like here you got your tricep. Coming over here, let's put in like a little bit of our brachialis and that arm. We want things to look relatively believable. Carve in a little bit of that bicep. He's a sand character, but he's still taking on a kind of like a biped human look and feel to it. So we want to at least lock in some of that resemblance. So then we know, all right, yeah, this is about the direction that we want to go before we start moving anything into anything else. And also, too, great question, by the way. I want to actually like really highlight that. That's a great question, because again, everybody is in a different journey in their artist career. For me, it's been a lot more technicals and stuff, so I haven't really had a chance to like dive into some fun sculpting as of late. So getting back into it, sometimes we just need to figure some stuff out. So that's what these streams are for, and I'm super happy to answer those questions. So thanks for such an awesome engagement. I love streaming with that in mind. Oh, Rodolfo's in the house. Yo, what's happening, dude? No, check this out, buddy. I've been staring at this very specific image since I was like 12. And I've always like thought this would be a cool thing to have in the room. Well, guess what's happening? We're gonna do it. We're gonna have that. So yeah, so that is the thing today. Yeah. What is the difference between 1, polished by feature and ZBrush, and 2, only ZBrusher? Polished by feature plus ZBrusher. Okay, polished by feature is literally a polishing tool. So if you go to deformation and you have your polish by feature, first off, here's a little fun fact. Boom. If you press and hold Control, which hopefully is my keyboard's up. Okay, great. If you hover over something like polish by feature as an example, okay, it's going to go ahead and I'm going to say polish by feature, hover over, I'm going to press and hold Control. It's going to tell you exactly what that feature does. And that's super, super, super cool. So in this case, feature, it's literally going to try to polish everything based on the feet. This is going to sound super repetitive. It's literally just an overall. It's a different algorithm for polishing. Let's try to not make this as complicated as we can. It's going to look at all the features of my mesh, i.e., my plane changes, all that good stuff. When I go ahead and move that slider, even just a little bit, it's going to kind of smooth things out. Notice my form is kind of holding its shape as much as it can, depending on how hard it is. If I go super crazy, It's just going to basically kind of polish the whole model, and it's going to keep in mind the silhouette of that model. So when I start building things up, say something like this, retile, oh, you know, I kind of want to polish that. It's going to take a look at that mesh, and it's going to kind of anticipate what needs to get polished, and it's going to leave the overall look of this alone. Essentially, kind of think of it in that sense. ZRemesher, okay, is a different algorithm altogether. If this character were to be Z-remeshed, it's the polish by feature is still going to work exactly the same here. So if I go to Z-remesh and I Z-remesh this, okay, now it's Z-remeshed. Notice here now, it's lowering the resolution of this, so it's already naturally kind of smoothing things out. At a low resolution, it's already kind of smoothing things out. Now, if I do the same thing, if I go to polish by features, now notice this is kind of more of a comparison between Dynamesh polish by feature versus Z-remeshing. If I Z-remesh and I polish by features, there are less notable features in that, so it's going to polish that a little bit harsher. If I were to subdivide and then polish by features here, now it's going to, it has more information because the mesh is denser, and so it's going to polish less. So it's really more of a question about the density of my mesh rather than the feature of Z-remeshing. So think of it this way: the more dense your model is, the more polished by feature is going to make smaller changes. The less dense, it's going to make big changes, which also leads us to boop, these little bubbles. These little, yeah, I call them bubbles. They're little circles. If you do the polish by features and you like quote pop the bubble, so here this is what it looks like. Let's do 43%. So that's what 43% looks like with the bubble closed, or the circle closed. If I were to pop that and now do same thing about 43%, boom, oh my gosh, what happened? It's just a stronger algorithm, and that is actually made for, let's say, when we subdivide. So if I subdivide this up, even in a Dynamesh state, now it's about 1 million vertices, and I were to try to polish this with the bubble closed, see, not much changed. So if I were to pop that bubble and open that up, all of a sudden now we're getting a little bit more of that change. And that's just a different algorithm to give you a different result in that feature stack. So kind of think of it in that regards. So it's more about density with polish by feature than it is whether you're Z-remeshed or if you're Dynameshed. Yeah, Z-remesh is more final. Z-remesh is definitely, like I said earlier, you are moving away from your primary forms and you're moving into your secondary forms. You're not going to make big major changes. I would stay away from Z-remeshing and then being like, oh, you know what he needs? Horns. Like, don't do that. Like, that's not what it was really intended for. It's more about like, yes, I have made my character and he has all of his horns, and now I want to go ahead and finalize his silhouette and move into starting the secondary process. So that's the way I would think of it. Z-remesh or manual retopologize when you are ready to lock in your primary silhouette and move into secondary. It's really, for me, I always hate teaching something and saying it's really that simple. I don't like that phrase because, you know, I don't think sometimes it's super obvious. But that's how I would think about it. It's more about finding a good point where it's like, oh, you know what? I'm done with this now. I'm able to move on to quote the next part. That's when I would use this. So yeah, that's the understanding of it, and that's how I look at it and recommend you guys look at it too. Okay. So we got this blob of a head here. It's looking kind of crazy. Okay. So I need, okay, so now based on that, density and resolution is your Achilles heel whenever you are sculpting as a whole. So what I mean by that is, okay, I want to work on his eyes, but right now I have the main shape of him. He's not super complicated of a character. I mean, look at this thing. It's the most beautiful thing you've ever seen. But I want to get a mouth in him. I want to get his eyes in there. And I can't do that super well with this mesh, because if I wanted to get his eyes in there, well, what's going to happen is right? I'm going to fight the mesh. Now I'm popping a hole, and this mesh is starting to stretch. And yes, I could Dynamesh, but now I can start going in and Dynamesh. But I'm going to start fighting this because now I want to sculpt on this. I'm starting to develop thin walls. Yes, backface max is this, etc., etc. But instead of trying to fight the mesh and keep them super low, I am a try to keep it as low as possible type guy until I need to, quote, step up. So what I could do at this point is now we can find the resolution. We know it's 16,000, so let's go to Dynamesh. And now I like to double the effects every time, because if you double your pleasure and double your fun, you end up with doubling gum. It's not an ad, it's an ad. That's a 90s kid thing. All right, yes, anyway. Funny. Okay, so go from 32 to 64. Boom. Now all of a sudden we're moving into this pace where now if I were to start to pop a hole in here, notice how the mesh itself is now giving me less resistance, which is awesome. So now I can start doing things like popping a mouth in there, rebuild this, and start getting a little bit more of what I'm looking for. So we can start locking in a few more. And, you know, if this ends up not ultimately being what I'm going for, right? If the mesh is still fighting me, I can go up. But if we start low and we start with a pretty simple resolution, if we find out it's too low, then we just move up in the world. But right now, just for a block out, this is feeling okay. It's still going to fight me a little bit. I guarantee it. We're going to get a little bit of resistance here, but that's fine. I'm not super worried about that. There we go. It's only when you start getting like true resistance of things that you want to then move as quick as you can. Okay, so finding this character's head again. And also what I would like to point out too, especially for anyone who's like, you know, new and trying to explore 3D as a whole, I could care 2 cents or less about how this is really looking other than finding this silhouette. I don't care if he looks ugly for the longest time because it doesn't matter, right? Most, if not every single model I've ever built in my entire life has looked really nasty in the beginning. But you just have to know what your end game is supposed to be, and hopefully you just kind of guide yourself through ultimately understanding like, okay, yeah, this is going to be, quote, the direction of it. So I'm not super worried about if his, you know, if he's looking super beautiful out the gate. We will get him there soon enough. Right now, I just need to get all the base forms and stuff in there. And because he's going to be a sand creature, we're going to be throwing some sand on him. But again, I'm not too worried about his face right now. He's beautiful. He's amazing. And I love every second of it. So just kind of think of it that way. Just work through and start, you know, don't be afraid to explore a bit. There we go. And he's going to be less anatomy driven. I start with the anatomy for 2 reasons. One, it's just good practice. The more you practice something, the more permanent it becomes. That's why I always say practice makes permanent, not practice makes perfect. Practice makes perfect is kind of misleading because unfortunately, at least I'm not perfect. Trust me. I don't believe in perfection, but the more you do something, muscle memory kicks in, and then eventually you get kind of a more permanent lock in how you approach things. I've sculpted like 1,000 arms, 1,000 legs, you know, hundreds of bodies. And at some point I'm like, I just kind of know where things need to roughly be. And so by locking in those shapes, you kind of just keep practicing that workflow and stuff like that. And then everything is copacetic. So I'm going to ignore these hands, by the way. I know I blocked them out, but sometimes this happens. Get rid of them. Just get them out of here. Why? Because it's going to take me more work to rebuild that hand than it would to build a new hand from scratch and then get it where I need to be. So that all being said, what we're going to do is we're going to now set this kind of in a pose state find his shapes, and then we're going to move into kind of figuring out how Link should be on top of them. So let's get a hand sculpted, and then let's go ahead and start finding him a little bit more. So let's see. Difference between move and move topology. Hold on. Oh, I might have missed something. Let me scroll back up. So sorry. Thank you so much. Not a problem. Is it bad to work with Dynamesh? I mean, it does the job. No, it's not bad to work with Dynamesh. Dynamesh is designed for the creative process, for you to do exactly what you're seeing on screen. I'm going through and I'm just sculpting away. Think of Dynamesh like traditional clay. Okay, I got a box of monster clay right here. If I wanted to start sculpting with this, you just gotta throw it. You gotta throw the clay down and start carving away at it. And you're just pulling away and adding clay, and you're not really doing much more than just in the mindset of just building. Dynamesh is for building. Just build. Just build. Dynamesh is awesome for that. Can you still merge subtools that are remeshed, or should you think about the merging while in Dynamesh phase? Yes, think about merging in the Dynamesh phase. Think about what needs to get welded together and what should remain separate, and build out according. So let's go to Link here for a example. Here's my block out. So I'm just gonna hit solo for a second. This was all built from a sphere. I just ripped him together. Took me about couple hours to get him relatively where I wanted it to be. So yeah, I'd say I'd had most of them blocked out about 30 minutes and then started working through. In this case here, yeah, this all I knew was going to get merged together. And then his hair and his hat were going to be separate, but then I was able to use his body to build his shorts, to build his t-shirt that's going to be form-fitting, and to end up ultimately building his tunic, right? So we have parts of his tunic. I was able to pull all of this information literally from this. So I knew as character goes, this was all going to be literally locked in as one piece. So think about that process. In this case here, you know, and we'll get to that in a second. I'm going to be building his hand right now. So I'm going to be building a hand, and then we're going to be setting the hand in place, and then it's thinking about merging it. So with anything that's ZBrush, if you think of it as more of a permanence, then and you want things to be like brought in together to be permanently welded, and I'm using welded for a specific reason, then think about, you know, keeping things like Dynamesh, or you're going to use something like Sculptress Remesh by Union. That's something else that we can get into. But if you want things merged together and not welded, then just make sure they're the same subdivision level, which I'll show you an example once we get to his hands. Okay, what's the difference between move and move topology? Great question. That's super awesome. Let's do this. Let me show you real fast. So we're gonna go ahead and I'm just going to merge visible for a second. So let's go to merge, and we're gonna do merge visible. And this will be a prime example of why you want to do this. Okay, here is everything merged together, and I'm gonna go to poly groups, and I'm gonna go auto groups. So the difference is, if I were to just get the move brush, and let's say I want to move his hat. I'm gonna start moving his hat. But notice that my big old brush is literally moving everything. He's dancing. Right? Okay. But let's say I just want to move his hat. There's two ways I can do that. I can literally come up here to brush, go to auto mask, and just turn on topological. And now with that same big old brush, it's going to go ahead and just move the one component. Or, and this is where move topological comes into play, hence in the name, I go to move, and now I have my move topological, which is right there. It's just the move brush with topological turned on. That's it. That's the difference. Instead of making people go into a menu, we just created the exact same brush and we turned on topological. And so you can make your own version of this brush, but that is the difference. So if I wanted to move just his tunic, I can do that. If I wanted to move just him, I can do that. It's all about, it's working with poly groups. So there are some really cool like hacks to this where topological has a range. So if I come here and I see that there's a range and a smooth distance, okay, this is actually what's really cool. So let's say, for example, let's go back to our sand monster guy here. sometimes this is where things can really come into play. So I'm going to use the move brush just as it is. And I don't know if I saved it, so I'm just going to save. I'm going to mask this section off. Okay, and I'm just going to bring his face down really close. I'm just going to do this just for a second, like as if his lips were touching. Okay, so the normal move brush without topological turned on, right? It's off. It's going to move everything. It's super close, and I'm trying to, like, I just want to move his lips, and I can't do that. You can get some cool shapes. If I go to move topological now, here, even though we're super close, look at this. It's ignoring the distance. So now I can turn around and start opening his mouth back up. Even though it's the same poly group, I could just do this. And so this also has another function where I can use move topological to start making micro changes to my mesh at that point. So just a little something to kind of note. Move topological functions off of its polygroups, but you also can focus on the closeness or the distance between those things. So if you close the lips of a character and it's not two different polygroups, you need to open them back up or tweak with the upper and lower parts of the lip. That's a great way to do that. As far as I know, I always use move topological. Yeah, nothing wrong with that. Absolutely. Move topological is great. Oh, hi. Hey, what's up, Wild Noodlers? How you doing? What do you mean by that? So, thanks for doubtful. Those are funny hands, yeah. I'd say that's the best way. That's the best way you would suggest someone gets comfortable. Oh, what's the best way? Jeez, what's the best way you would suggest someone to get comfortable with ZBrush? The first question, actually, now I would ask them is, do you have the iPad? Do you have an iPad? And if you do have an iPad, ZBrush for iPad, there's a free version. You can just jump in, you can start moving it. But here's what I would say. Sculpting in itself, ZBrush is a specialty tool. And like specialty tools, I equate it to like learning a language. The best thing to do is just kind of like jump in every single day and just kind of play with it. Like just come in for 5 minutes, have a fun little project that you want to do, quickly like do a little funky, I was doing this during a meeting and just like having fun and just like messing about. Like, don't worry about having like a super crazy project. Just come in and get like the basics of navigation down. And then once you have the basics of navigation down, start playing with some of these brushes. You know, if you're in for like just sculpting, pick like clay buildup as a good example and start putting some clay down and just feel how it works. But like a language, you kind of need to practice every single day so that your brain starts like kind of feeling it, because ZBrush is not a traditional 3D application. Like ZBrush is actually originally designed as a painting application with 2.5D painting in mind. So it's not like your typical 3D application. So it's more about like just getting in and practicing and having some fun with it. That's ultimately how I would suggest. And then once you like spend a couple days and get kind of comfortable with it, that's when I say pick a project. You know, come in and it's like, oh, I want to do something kind of cool. Don't make it a super crazy project. You know, don't be like, okay, I've never sculpted before, and now I want to sculpt a Gothic architectural cathedral. Like, maybe don't do that. That would be a lot. Start with something small, something fun, and something that's important to you, which actually leads to my fan art. Like, play with fan art, do some fun things that you like, create a character that you know really well, and just have fun with it. Art's supposed to be fun. So start there and then work your way in. If you're coming at learning ZBrush because you're in school trying to get a job as an artist, then hopefully the instructors are guiding you well enough to how to use the tool for a specific purpose. But you still want to be in it every day. You still want to open it up and just doodle and kind of make it your own. That's my recommendation. What would you say when it comes to modeling? What would you say ZBrush/Blender can do that others don't? ZBrush is the #1 sculpting application because of its super high fidelity and its detail. It can hold super resolution, and it's also really friendly to hardware. So ultimately, oh, I thought I chopped these hands off. Ultimately, what ZBrush does well, better than any other application on the market right now, is give you an ultimate sculpting experience. And I stand by that. Other tools like Nomad and Blender, they're great for learning. Like they're great tools. I've played with both of them and I think they're fantastic. But ZBrush is the #1 standard because of what it can offer, and its specialty in sculpting is unmatched at this time. So I would say when you're going into ZBrush, think of it this way: ZBrush is about the character, the prop, or the environment, creative experience. You are coming in to sculpt with that mindset. As an industry standard, if you're trying to get a job, ZBrush is the ideal program for that. And just there hasn't been any other tool. They've come close, and they are great. They are great competitors, but at the end of the day, ZBrush is the top for a reason, and it's because of what it can do. It's designed for speed, performance, and high fidelity and full customization. I use the standard UI all the time, but it's because of my job. I teach ZBrush, and I like to teach the standard UI so everybody knows where things are. Then we move into customization, and then you can start making it your own. But ZBrush is designed for speed and just flawless execution every single time. And the brush system is one of the best in the world. So we could talk all day about it, but I definitely say ZBrush is, and it's still used in almost every industry that you can think of that deals with 3D. So what would be the best way to... great questions, guys, by the way. Great questions. Hold on. What is the best way to prevent your polygons from deforming a lot in the first stage of sculpting? Dude, great question. So the best way to keep them from deforming a lot is just understanding the resolution system of this. So those hands, for example, all this got super deformed. This was my fault because the resolution was just not able, the distance, for example, between these fingers were just so close together based on what the resolution was trying to do that it just ended up melting them. So just kind of understanding the resolution a little bit and what it does with Dynamesh specifically. As I work, the higher the number gets, the more information you can pack into tighter spaces. So that's super important to kind of keep in mind. I'm going to start sculpting a hand while I take the next question here. But we're going to start with a cube. Traditional clay hurts my hands. It's much cooler in 3D. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. Got to get those hand muscles going. How would you go about doing the edges for brown one in the lower left corner? Easiest way to do the swirl for the Cinnabon. Wait, the brown one? Wait, you mean the character? Sorry, I want to make sure I understand the question. Oh, so okay, wait, so like a Cinnabon. You want to make a Cinnabon? Cinnabon, actually, the way I would do a Cinnabon, then we'll do a hand. This is how I would do a Cinnabon. Let's do this. Let's switch. There we go. Control this out. Let's come in here to the simple tool. And out the gate, we got a spiral 3D. This is the fun part about ZBrush. So I have this little spiral effect. I'm going to hit edit. So there's two modes to ZBrush. So there is the quote, kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? An initializing state, and then there is the sculpting state. So the initialized state, when I bring out a mesh like this already is giving me kind of that Cinnabon feel, right? So I can actually modify this. So I can go to initialize. I drew it out. I went to my simple brush, which, let's do that again. Let's clear this out. I'm near. Come in here and just grab a mesh primitive. So I have 3D meshes. If I click this and draw this out and then go to edit, this is the initialized state. I can modify this, but I can't actually sculpt on it. By sculpting on it, I need to convert it to, quote, make polymesh 3D, which is the sculpting stage of ZBrush. So this stage right here means I can edit it. So if I go to my initialize function, I actually have a few buttons down here, buttons and sliders. The axis in which it lives on, its coverage, it's, what is that? So that is the hollow button if something's going to be, solid or have like hollow, the thickness, and some other things. So what I could do now, for example, is I can just start saying like, you know what, let me look at this radius here. So I can start kind of manipulating this a little bit and seeing what this looks like. My coverage, I can go denser, or I can loosen this up a little bit. So maybe say something more like this. Also too, the radius of it. The radius of this, right? If I go here to 100, I have two different radius types, how tight something can be. So I can bring it closer together if I need to, kind of giving me this effect. So that's kind of cool. Also, I can twist the mesh a little bit. I can subdivide it, make it a little bit denser or less. So depending on how I want to, how low resolution I would like that to be. Again, the thickness of this too can matter. I don't know if I covered that, but I have two different thicknesses. So I have my like kind of internal thickness and then the external. So I can start messing about with some of this here. And I can kind of just start, again, playing with everything as is. And just kind of like shaping this the way I think it needs it to be. What else could I do here? Yes, so let's go 0 here. So actually, I could also kind of flatten this out a little bit. Could do something more like this if I wanted to. So it's, what is it? Yeah, it's displacement function. There we go. Say something like this. So I can get the, I can get this overall to kind of maybe something more of how I would like this to be. And then again, I can add some resolution to that. So I can use this as a starting base if I would like in order to do that. And Cinnabons are rolled and then they kind of blossom when they are cooked. I'm assuming you mean a cooked one. So from there, if I do hollow, for example, yeah, it's gonna give me something internal radius. Yes, there we go. So we start messing with our internal radius and that can give me something. Sorry, internal thickness. Yeah. Bunch of fun stuff. Anyway, I don't want to hollow it right now. So let's just get something like this. And then once I have something that I think I like, yeah, let's just say we're good with that. Now I can go ahead and say make polymesh 3D. Now I can start to sculpt on this. And now I can come in and start sculpting in that place. So I would start here. That's one way that you can go ahead and start getting something that would quote look like a Cinnabon. If I wanted this to be like a flat section, I would just go ahead and again, you can kind of like flatten the bottom if you would like. Yeah, it all depends on like the exact look that you would want to go for. But this is how maybe I would approach doing a Cinnamon at first. And then if I wanted to add detail, I already have some decent mesh, but notice the center here is a little funny, you know, so maybe I would just come in and kind of inflate this a little bit. And then this is where I would decide, do I want to, you know, how do I want to do this? Do I want to quote, you know, dynamesh it and have it just a single mesh? Do I want the mesh to loop around? That's completely up to you, but you know, you could start subdividing at this point and you can get something that kind of looks Cinnabunny out the gate. And then you can also, it's not the best Cinnabon. I would definitely take my time with all this, but then from here you can easily start like, you know, oh, do I want to add some frosting to it, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a few things you can do with that. You could do like a, how do I want to do that? Like, I don't know if mesh balloon would be the best way to do it. There's a few different tools you could do, but no, not that way. Can't do that with subdivision. So delete lower on that. But again, you could start coming through. Yeah, whatever. There you go. Yeah, really funky dunky. You could start adding some frosting to that. Of course, that didn't really do anything there, right? So you could also just come through. I can, why am I doing this? There we go. You could also, there's a ton of ways to do this. You could use curve, multiple curve tubes at this point if you wanted to. You can actually go up to the picker. You can go continue with Z, and then look, you can start kind of doing something like this and drizzle a little bit of frosting on there. Separate that out. That's really big. Lower your brush size, and you can start doing stuff like this. So anyway, really rudimentary. Really like here's everything, but hopefully that's helpful. Hey, what's up? Above Wong Art, how you doing? ZBrush's life, yeah. Hey, Leo, how you doing, buddy? Do you like incorporating Sculptress on the Dynamesh stage? It depends. Great question. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, let me just real quick, let me load back up my little guy. Where is he? Not that guy. Oh, yes, we've done all sorts of stuff now. Where is he? Oh, here he is, the hand. All right, so yes and no. It depends. So for example, if I need to change a specific spot, like let's say I need to add some detail to his deltoid here, as an example, I could definitely turn on Sculptress at this point, and now I can start carving in, and what that's going to do is it's going to start doing this. It's going to start tessellating on the fly, giving me that information, and it's only going to build that tessellation based on each stroke. I like this for little things, but Dynamesh does have a resolution cap. I think it can't go above 5 mil, I think is where Dynamesh caps out, if I remember right. So Sculptress could add to that really, really quickly. In early stages, I think it's pretty cool. It just depends on what I'm currently doing. Where I think it thrives a lot and where I say yes is actually going to be, let's go ahead and get rid of that. Where that's going to be is something like Snakehook. Snakehook itself, by nature, if this is off and I go do this, it's going to start tearing that mesh. And that's not going to be super friendly for me. So in this case, I think it's very specific, has good purpose, like to do something like this, because then now I can go ahead and start building my shapes. Like I want a little tree coming off the sky for some reason. So now I can build these shapes really quickly off of this, and I don't have to worry too much about the mesh breaking because I am actually sculpting. But every time I sculpt, it's going to go ahead and it's going to start adding that topology, which Abe, you know. But I think it has great purpose and use cases for things like this. But I don't use it too much when I start getting into detailing, but to each their own. Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Wild Noodlers, I tend to go on tangents, so hopefully that was helpful. Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, use the curved tubes. Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, curved tubes is awesome. Is awesome. Okay, let's get a hand in here. I keep bringing these hands back for some reason, so let's officially like chop them off. Yeah, let's get those out of there. There you go. Perfect. Let's start building a hand here real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this above, and we're going to go ahead and start squaring this down. And now I'm just going to go ahead and start kind of slicing and dicing just to get, say something like this. So I'm right-handed, so I usually end up building a left hand, and then it's kind of like, yeah, it's my process. I tend to build like a left hand, and then after that, just kind of mirror and weld in and stuff like that. But however it works for you guys. So, but a fun fact, I've built a lot of hands in my days. Hands are still one of those things that I just love them because they always tend to yell at me when I'm doing stuff. Hands like to remind me that I'm human and I don't know everything. So I'm going to go ahead and just bring out some sort of Z-sphere here. Or sorry, not Z-sphere, but insert mesh cylinder. There we go. I got Z-sphere on the brain. There we go, cool. So what I'm going to do here is we already have kind of the palm of the hands. So something to keep in mind. Proportions are everything in life. Everything has proportions. And something to note when we're talking about hands is typically, I say typically because I'm sure there's somebody out there that is very unique and has a different thing, but your middle finger on your hand is typically the same length as your palm. So from your wrist to the base of your finger is that distance, and then your ring finger, or your middle finger, is typically the same length on that. So how I like to start my hands is I like to go ahead and just get the middle finger built from there. And then here's a cool little thing. I'm going to go ahead and drag this out. I'm going to turn around and use the arrow, or the arrow keys on my keyboard. That's going to go ahead and give me a little bit of a knuckle here. Didn't really need to turn that around. That's just me being really weird. But I'm going to go ahead and kind of get something like this going. Now let's just do auto groups real fast. So polygroups, auto groups. There we go, isolate this. We're just going to move this down just a bit. I also tend to kind of roll this out. I have sculptures turned on. I don't really want sculptures turned on right now. There we go. take that move brush, and I'm just going to kind of get like a typical finger base here. There we go. So this is where move topological actually would be like really cool, because I don't need to mask things off. I'm a masker. I tend to mask everything off. So I'll do something like this. And then from here, the little trick you could do with masking is just control and tap the areas in which the polygroup that you want to have open. So if I turn on my gizmo and control tap, or even if my gizmo is off, come here. Yeah, gizmo on, control tap, there you go. So control tap, get that, invert this, move this down. Can kind of shrink this just a little bit. There we go. This is roughly now the size of what I'm going for. So now that I have this, we're going to go ahead and pull this up. Now I'm not super worried. We can always make it thicker. Just control, control drag that middle yellow little square. That's going to inflate. And you can just kind of move this where you need this to be. So don't worry too much about the thickness of it. Just kind of get it roughly to where you want that to be. So say something like this. Also too, just a little fun fact, hands are not perfectly straight. As much as I would like them to be, they're not. They actually are slightly curved. Even if you hold your hand up like this, you're going to notice a nice curve to that hand. So what we could do here is we can use something like a deformer if you'd want. And you can actually move the axis by pulling one of these cones, and then you can give yourself a little bit of your resolution here. And so you can start pulling this up, pull this down, and just give yourself overall a nice curve shape to that. So you can get something that looks a lot like this. There we go. And I like to pull the pinky side just a slightly further down than the index side, because it always kind of looks just a little slanted like that. And then you can just say, okay, accept, move this back around. And then now we can just go ahead and reposition this. And notice I masked off the finger. It's on the same subtool, but by masking off the finger, I actually just protected that from being bent as well. And then I can control, duplicate, and I can move this. I can scale this down just a little bit, or instead of scaling it down, you can just kind of crush it down just a little bit. And now your quote, index finger is now just a little bit shorter than your ring finger. Now here's something that's really cool about hands is your ring finger, depending on who you are, there is difference. You can look up shapes of hands and all that other fun stuff, but some people's ring finger is actually longer than their index finger. I went down a few rabbit holes recently, and I always thought that was such a cool little detail. So you can play with that kind of proportion and stuff like that. And just kind of see like what makes sense for you. But I try to keep them in my sculptures relatively the same. It's just something that I end up doing. And I also keep a little space in between all that. And then here we're going to do this one more time. We're just going to angle this slightly, kind of scale this down, because he does have 4 fingers in the reference. And then I will also, something I tend to do, let me go back here, because I tend to rotate the ring and the pinky in just a little bit, and I bring that in, just say something like that. The reason why I do that is because your hands are actually made for gripping. The design of a hand is super cool because it goes into a fist, right? But you could fit things into that fist. So it's designed for gripping. And a fun little checkpoint for you when you're modeling hands is your thumb and your ring, your thumb pad touches every other pad of your fingers. And so the reason why that can work is because, again, it's designed to squeeze in and hold. So I tend to curl the ring and pinky fingers just in slightly to kind of give that little bit of that idea behind it. And I kind of just follow that path. So it's my little thing that I do. So little fun thing. Okay. Usually use these spheres for hand and fingers. Should I just use cylinders? Whichever works for you. Oh, absolutely, whichever works for you. I do it this way because I originally learned sculpting through Blockout. It was just an easier way. And then my first official sculpting teacher for ZBrush was actually Shane Olson, and he's like king of Blockout. And so for me, let's go ahead and do this. Yeah, I'm just kind of smoothing it, giving it a little bit more of a roundness and not super squared off. There we go. For me, it's just something I kind of lean into a little bit when I'm doing more complicated stuff. I am not consistent with block out or just Z-sphere or just straight up grabbing a sphere and sculpting a thing. I am so inconsistent. I am super finicky. It's a mood of the week for me. However I'm feeling, that's what we're doing. So, but whatever works. At the end of the day, whatever works for you is the correct answer. And I'll stand by that. If you are doing it and you're getting the results that you're getting, that's it. Keep doing that. You're doing fantastic. So, definitely up to you. Okay. Now here's something really cool about hands too, and this is why I choose the blockout method for most hands, is because I have little checkpoints with myself. So for example, one of the checkpoints, and it's a little hard to see unless you're zooming into a hand. Let's see if I can do it. Let's move this guy over here for a second because it's blocking my view. And let's go camera full screen. Okay, great. So it might be a little hard to see, but the webbing between your fingers, if I were to put this underneath my mic, there we go. So it's a little blurred, but here's my knuckles, right? Got my knuckle here, and then you can see the webbing, and there's like a little space here. But if I turn this around, I got my pad. That webbing is actually higher than the knuckle. See that? So the webbing ends higher than that knuckle. So with that in mind, how I like to kind of set this up a little bit. Let me not block the chat because pure ref, I like to have it on top. How I like to do this is I like to kind of pull this intersection in to define the ending of the pad of that hand right there. And then I like to kind of pull this back just a little bit, almost revealing the knuckles at this point. And what I can do is go to make sure I go to my regular move. There we go. So now I'm kind of creating almost a kind of tapered approach to this. If I were to like grab my clip curve here, I'm almost doing this. In fact, that's exactly what I'm doing. And so now you have like the webbing here and then some indentation, like a little indentation right here. So something like that is what I like to do on that. It kind of gives me the illusion or the effect of having, quote, that webbing. And I'm going to go back to my IMM brush, and we're just going to go low poly sphere, and we're going to put in what is the kind of like hand butt. It's the little spot down here. This one actually gets a little elongated. Kind of put this here. There we go. It's one side to it. Again, grabbing the move brush and kind of just moving this around. There we go. And again, I just like to look at my own hand for reference. Your hand is the best reference you have when it comes to sculpting hands. Although, I got a fun story for you guys. I think I've told this story a million times, but you guys are going to love it because I'm going to tell it again. Because you're here and you like watching. But go back to full camera for a second. So look at my thumbs. Look at my short little stubby thumb. Look at that little guy. Look at that little guy. All right, so most of my characters back in the day when I was first starting to sculpt, oh my gosh, they all had that stubby little thumb. It's because the best advice I got was, hey, your hands are your best reference. So I was like, okay, cool. My hands are my best reference. That's what I'm going to do. Let's get the knuckle in here. So we're just going to get the thumb knuckle in here. So I was like, okay, great. That's my best reference. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And then I started getting criticized for my thumbs. People were telling me that my thumbs were not correct. The anatomy was wrong. They were like, thumbs are longer than that. And I was like, what are you talking about? And they said, no, like, look, and everybody else is in the room. You guys had like normal long thumbs. And mine was all like short and rounded. And then I sent a picture in the chat with my reference. And I was like, these are my hands. And everybody was like kind of shocked. They were like, what? wait, what? And I was like, yeah, that's my hand, bro. There you go. So that's why my characters, like, you go back to some of my early hands, my thumbs were just like short and stubby, and it's like, well, that's what we had. That's what I had. That was me. So pretty funny. But anyway, but use your hands anyway. Like, don't let people judge your hands. But yeah, fun stuff. Mr. White, what's happening, dude? Oh yeah, let the earth speak to you. Exactly. Does transpose line have any more functionality? Does have any more functionality than Gizmo? I read it as it does, but it's pretty confusing to learn. That's a great question. The transpose line has some pretty cool things that I think are just a little unique for the system than, let's say, the Gizmo. It still has some really good functions. And one of the functions that I love the most, actually, so let's go ahead and hit W, hit Y, and let's just come here, is actually the first one, which is going to be a little unexpected, but it's actually these little hash marks. These hash marks are actually a measurement system. So if I were to actually come up here to my preferences and go to transpose, I also have a transpose unit. And I can set minor ticks and major ticks, and I can set its scale units, all that. I can actually come in and basically turn this into a fully functional ruler. And these little ticks can be information points for how big something is. So you can set that up to, like, let's say this is equivalent of a meter. So if you're like, yeah, that's 1 meter, and then these little hash, then you'd be like, okay, that's 1/4 of a meter, that's half a meter, exactly. So you could do something like that. That's one. This is the number one thing that I think it actually outperforms the Gizmo, because the Gizmo, while it is super awesome, it doesn't have that visualization of that ruler right there. So the transpose for me is actually one of the greatest measuring tools in ZBrush you can use to understand how big something could be. The other thing too is actually this function here. Let's go ahead and do this. So you have these little circles here, and these circles, if I were to set these up at the very top to move, scale, or rotate, right, each one is going to do something different. So if I were to do move at the very top of this, right, so let's come here. I'm going to go from the bottom up to the top, so I'm going to do that on purpose. If I grab the top one, right, it's going to move from the top portion, the middle, it's going to move from the middle and the bottom. Look at this. Oh, now it's like I'm getting some like almost clipping action happening, and that's from the middle standpoint, right? So those are some different things. What you could also do with this, just under the move, is you could press and hold Alt, and now I can end up doing like a bend effect. If I were to just move like this, I'm actually not actually doing anything. I'm not bending the way I want. By pressing Alt, by hovering over that little white dot, pressing Alt, now I'm able to actually bend this. And so I can do that with this red dot too. I can now start bending it this way. This is actually how I make my tongues. I actually create a shape of a tongue, and then I end up bending that tongue and then moving that point there. So I think this is some really cool stuff. Also, same thing with rotate. I can rotate from the center. I can, from the top, I can rotate, boom, from the center point. And then here I can rotate from the bottom. So you can get more specific points in that case if you would want. Same thing with scale. If I wanted to scale from the top, or if I wanted to scale from the bottom, or if I needed to universally scale, I can do all that stuff. So it has a little bit more control, but it has more points of contact. The idea of the Gizmo is that it makes all of that simpler, right? If I want to scale from the top here, just put your Gizmo at the top, and now I'm scaling. If I want to send it from the center, I can now do it from the center. If I want to come down here, I can do it from here. So the idea is that the Gizmo is actually a modern tool, and a lot of DCCs had the Gizmo. And so ZBrush included their version of the Gizmo, which I think is one of my favorite versions of it, because unlike some other DCCs, scale, move, and rotate are active all at the same time. So if I just say W, I can rotate, I can scale, I can twist, I can, and I can do all of this stuff. I don't have to switch modes. Some DCCs, who will remain nameless just for the sake of argument, you have to switch, and ZBrush allows that to be active all at the same time. So the Gizmo is actually super powerful, and for most people has replaced the transpose tool. But for specific actions, the transpose tool has some really cool, unique things that I think ultimately the Gizmo just doesn't have. And so little things like that I think are super cool. So that's my hot take on that. Hopefully that was helpful. Yeah, you can align you can align the camera to transpose line, which is probably more useful. You could, yeah, you could also, where is that? What was that functionality? We added something like that. There it is. Okay, so you could do that with the gizmo as well. I knew, yeah. So with the gizmo, you can do that as well. So I could pick an axis, hold shift, and touch that arrow, and I can align the camera to that point. So if I was like, oh, I need it to be right here, shift, boom, now I'm looking straight at that. So I can alt tap here, and then I can turn around, hold shift, click that arrow, and I can do that. So you can align the camera with the gizmo as well. Actually, I think that was put in 2023-ish. I think. I can't remember. It's all a blur to me now. It's all a blur. But yeah, but you can align the camera with the gizmo as well, which is super cool. And yet that is a feature like I can't explain it. Again, just it's almost like a feature that like it's there. I've probably used it like a handful of times, but it is there and it's super cool. Okay. So here I'm going to go ahead. See, part of the reason why I have this bend here now, right, is because I want to put this hand here, and we're going to bury this knuckle into this little triangle pad. Say something like that. Cool, thank you. The line tool doesn't have the tool on the far right of the gizmo. I've used that like once. Wait, the line tool doesn't have the tool on the far right of the gizmo. You mean the, wait, sorry. Oh, you're welcome, but yeah. Wait, want to make sure I understand the line. Do you mean the transpose line? Tool doesn't have the tool on the far. All right. I've used that like once. Oh, gotcha. Kind of next to the padlock. Oh, yes. I see what you're saying now. Okay, yeah. Yeah, yes. That's the other thing, too. The gizmo has, like, all these deformers and stuff like that, too. Yes. And then, yes, I see what you're saying now. Sorry, brain fart over here. Thanks for playing. Yeah, the ability to do all the, you know, to select multiple tools is really helpful. I can't remember if there is. Yeah, it doesn't have. Yeah, I think that doesn't have it. Yep. Yeah, the pizza box. Yeah, this is the official name, guys. Transpose all selected subtools. That's a lot. Yeah, just pizza box. I think Joseph Dress said that. Oh my gosh, it's already 11:20. I'm gonna be streaming until noon, so let's get this hand built. Great questions, by the way. This is something that I love doing this. Okay, something else too. If I were to press and hold Control Shift and grab my little selection guy like this and select only certain polygroups of meshes that are not welded together, Control Shift A will reveal all of those. It's also another great way to turn around and do something like this. So you can kind of quickly and effectively isolate single meshes that might be, quote, welded together. So a little fun stuff. Okay, so we have something like this. This is a cool little hand. So here's a few different ways that you could do things if you wanted to merge or weld this together. I could just go straight into Dynamesh. There's nothing wrong with that. And if I do that, I want to make sure that I go to Dynamesh and go to my picker button or the slider and press and hold. And then I need to find a resolution that will absolutely work for this mesh. I want to find something that works well. And right now, the densest resolution is going to be these little fingies here. It's telling me 40, so if I turn this on, yeah, 40, that works. That keeps things pretty close. But the idea of the picker is instead of trying to figure out what resolution works, we're just going to go ahead and try to find something. And then from there, oh, look, 48. But now I can just type in 64 because I know that will be just probably a little bit better. I'm just going to go ahead and come in here and start kind of cleaning things up a little bit. Just going to go ahead and do a light smooth, very destructive, but you know, destruction, that's fine. I like to do things pretty weird sometimes. All right, so at this point now, one of the things I love to do, this is a check for me more so than anything else, all right, is I actually like to call out the knuckles and the fingernails. The way I do the fingernails, and this helps me visually with anything I'm doing, I just go ahead and grab like trim dynamic, and I just start placing the fingernails on the hand. The reason for this is going to help me visualize where everything else needs to be and keep the correct orientation of the hand. So when I do this and I start sculpting and I start adding in more of the fat pads and getting in more of the proper shape of things for the hands, this is also going to really help me identify where things need to be. And if I start thinking that things are going to be really weird and funky dunky, then I know I can stop and pull back. The other thing too is that I like to drag in parts of where quote the bending points or the knuckles are going to be. So I'm first going to add in the bend part. To me, this is the easiest way to identify your main fingers. So here, right, we got our main stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of look at based on where this knuckle is. I'm just going to go ahead and put in a little bit of these areas. Now, here's the cool part about this is you might be thinking as I'm carving these in right now, ooh, that proportion is not correct there, Ian. It's looking a little weird. And you're absolutely right. He's absolutely right. Name that quote. It'll be fun. Anyway, that's okay because I just locked in the fingers a little bit. This is where Move Infinite's going to come into play. Because now what I can do is I can like reestablish and remove some of these positions to make sure that I'm fitting things correctly. And I know I'm pulling this side down equally at the same time. It all comes together. So we're going to just reestablish a few different locations. Because I didn't put all the knuckles in the right spot. I just put little landmarks, little jumping off points for little old me to know where things are going to go. And that is a-okay. And now we can go ahead and kind of lob in some of the other knuckles, maybe trim down some areas that make absolutely no sense whatsoever. There we go. There we go. Yep, sounds good. Gonna give them a little bit of bony knuckles. Maybe lower my brush down a little bit. There we go. And then we're gonna go ahead and kind of clean this up. Little cool parts about the pinkies and the index finger is that they transition into this spot. Now we can go ahead and start adding in knuckle placements here. Also, for some reason, my alpha changed. So let's go alpha 18. It's one of my favorites. There we go. We're just going to go ahead and get little spots for these. And then let's grab the standard tool. So B for brush, ST, that's the standard brush. And then I'm just going to go ahead and just quickly paint some of these spots right here. This is just a quick guide to make sure that those bony landmarks make sense. And then I'm also going to carve down this little section. Yeah, something like this. There we go. Yeah, something like this. Yes. Yes, queen. There we go. Let's go ahead and carve in this little spot right here because there's nice little webbing in this area. So we want that webbing. We got webbing right here. So we're going to make sure we kind of round that there. Yep, it's not super beautiful. Yep, that's okay. Just a quick little block out. Get us kind of close to what we want. And this is a nice little starting spot for what we can do. Now, this is a little bit more like, again, more human-ish, not super creature-y-ish. That's okay. So we can always come through. Let's grab a different masking tool. Again, and we can just inflate some of this stuff. All right, we can give them a little bit more. There we go. That's a little bit better. Cool. We can always inflate things if we want, if we think it'll be beneficial. Now this is a left-handed tool. Let's go ahead. Left-handed tool. Left-handed hand. A left hand. Are you not entertained? All right. Let's go ahead and now proportionally, let's try to make this as close as accurate as possible. And this is where things can go kind of funky quickly. So we're gonna go ahead and just gonna place this here. There we go. Now we're gonna start trying to fit this to his wrist. Just gonna narrow this down a little bit. This is where I actually recommend pulling the wrist into the hand because the wrist tapers for most people. He's a sand creature. We can always blow things up. We're just trying to weld it and get it fairly accurate to the character. And I also like to kind of bend the hands just a teeny bit. Here, I'm gonna say something like that. Just a teeny bit of a, yeah. We're gonna end up posing him later, so I'm not worried about this stuff, but we can kind of move things in. You've never seen Move Infinite before? Oh my gosh, yeah, Move Infinite is so cool, man, so cool. One of my favorite move brushes of all times. Super cool. Okay, so say something like that, and now let's go ahead and take this, and let's do this. Let's come here to no, geometry and modify topology. Now here's a fun little fact. Most people know that modify topology, if we come here, I'm gonna turn this off, and I'm gonna go ahead and just clip this side. Okay, so a lot of times if there's information on the from the middle part of the screen on screen left, if there's information over here, when I hit mirror and weld, it's going to take that and move that on over. But for anything that has information solely on the right side and nothing's on the left, when I hit mirror and weld, it does the exact same thing. So it drives, it checks the left side, and then it moves to the right side. And it does that kind of thing. And it's pretty cool. So when that happens, just like, no, because I mentioned doing a left hand on purpose, because that's what I'm looking at when I'm using my reference. That's usually what I think. I don't mirror it just to mirror it again. I know it will mirror just fine. So I'll do the mirror and weld things. Now, when we're merging stuff together, which I could have shown with the fingers, but when I'm choosing to merge stuff together, which was a conversation piece earlier, then essentially what you could do is we could choose. So I mentioned the question was, choosing what to merge, subdivision stuff versus like stuff. This is Dynameshed here. So the thing is that one of the ways that you could do this, let's go ahead and hit save real fast. There we go, let's hit save. I'm actually going to duplicate a version of this and duplicate a version of this. And I'm going to move this up. We're just going to hide these two. Okay. Great, so it should work on the top part here. So with this right here, if I were to go ahead and merge this down, I know I'm going to weld these two things together. They're both Dynamesh. This is super cool. Really easy to do. I can do that. I could just, quote, Dynamesh this, right? I could come in and just say, boom, Dynamesh, and that will be fine. But let's say we maybe wanted to use a different form of merging stuff together. And that is where Remesh by Union will come into play. So for this example, again, for the Dynamesh one, we can just find the density of it, Dynamesh it, weld it, you're good to go. That's how I'm going to take this approach. But let's say here we have something a little bit different. So we're going to turn everything else on, turn this off. Let's actually do this. Let's say we are happy with this character and we ultimately turned around and ZBrushed. Boom. There we go. We ZBrushed. Awesome. And then this hand here, and then we ZBrushed this hand. Okay, so now we got two ZBrushed hands. And we are thinking, you know what? I want to merge these two items together, but I don't want to Dynamesh it again because I'm happy with this and I just want to weld things together. Then what you can do is you can merge down, and by merging down, also I'm going to duplicate this one more time because I'm going to show something else real fast. Okay, just making sure I plan everything correctly. Okay, so here what you could do without any subdivisions whatsoever, we can turn around and say, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and merge that down. So geometry, so come here to subtool, go ahead and merge down. It's gonna say, yo, you wanna do that? You can't undo it. You're like, yeah, it's totally fine. So now you have this here. And now we're like, okay, I don't wanna Dynamesh, but I wanna weld stuff together. What you could do is open up your gizmo, because we love the gizmo. There we go. I'm gonna turn off symmetry just to keep it here center. And then I'm just gonna open up this little cogwheel and we're gonna say Remesh by Union. And what this will do is this is gonna go ahead and stitch all of that together. And once you stitch all that together, it's going to go ahead and you can accept that. Now I turned off symmetry at the at the beginning and stuff like that. Doesn't really matter the reason, but it's going to turn off symmetry for you. Doesn't really work with symmetry turned on, so we auto turn symmetry off. I just do it by habit. It's just hitting X, but we turn it off for you because we deal with non-symmetrical on the remesh by union, so we turn it off. But either way, it will turn off. Just remember it turns off. So then when I go ahead and hit accept, now if I want to start sculpting again, I just have to turn symmetry back on. So that's one way to do that. Now, something to note when merging items together, let's go ahead and delete this guy. We don't need him. Let's just go ahead and hit save real fast because I do want to make sure I don't get rid of that guy. What if our model has subdivisions? So here, subdivide, and we're going to subdivide. So here's the cool part. If for whatever reason you have two models and they both have the same amount of subdivision, so subdivision level 3, subdivision level 3, that's totally fine. If I merge these down together, so let's go to our, there we go. Let's go to our subtool and let's say merge down. Boom, we merge that down. Guess what? Subdivision level 3. It's going to retain your subdivisions for you. So I can still step down and I can still step up. And this also means I can step down to my lowest and I can actually come through. Let's actually do this guy. There we go. So I can actually come down to my lowest and I can make changes like changing my poly group, or I can even split things off. So I can go to modify topology and I can go ahead and, no, sorry, not modify topology. I can go to subtool and I can go to split and I can do split hidden because you can split your parts off from the lowest subdivision level. But what if for some reason, let's say that your bottom subtool had only 2 subdivision levels and your top subtool has 3. When I merge this down, so let's go to merge, let's merge down. And it's going to say you want to do that, so yeah, no worries. Let's go back. Now notice that I've lost subdivision level 3. That is because one of the models only had subdivision level 2, and so we automatically turn around and ZBrush will retain the 2 of the subdivision levels as best as it can, and it gets rid of the level 3. So just kind of keep that in mind when you're merging things together. It's really possible to do that, but then you can still, again, you could still then continue to choose to weld things together as needed. So just a little tip on how to merge things together, as that was a question earlier. All right, let's go ahead and hit save here real fast. And then we're going to go into kind of getting a base pose. I don't want to do too much detail with this. I want to get into a base pose really quickly because, again, we want to set things up to where is it? Oh, come on. Fingers. There we go. There we go. I want to get into this pose right here, and we can lock in at least this character's pose. He's going to be really fun in order to sculpt in detail from a pose position. So we're going to get him at least moved into a pose, and that will be pretty cool. Hey, Ian, do you know if there is any plan to add rigid body or something similar to chains, necklaces, and so on? Because curves always deforms the geometry at least a tiny bit. So I can't really say what the plans are for something like that. However, there are ways that you could get around that in particular, and one of them would be using micropoly just in the meantime. So unfortunately I can't tell you about development plans, but as an example, what you could do is you could go here to cylinder for, let's just say a quick symbol. Let's say we want to do a necklace, so we're just going to identify this one little section, and we're going to go in here and we're going to just delete hidden, so that'll be fine. And let's actually hold this up here, and then we're going to add a plane for a floor, just as what we can do. So let's do boom 90. Let's just go ahead and rotate this 90. There we go. And let's just drop this down and let's just blow this up. Okay. Just so we have a, I guess I could have just used the floor. I don't really, nah, that's fine. Whatever. Anyway, we already did it, so let's just do that. Okay. So in this case here, we don't really need it. Sorry, my bad. I'm doing too much. Okay, so here I have this guy. Let's say we wanted to turn this into a chain. So you have what's called micropoly. Micropoly is perfect for this because of that deformation that you are discussing. So if we go to dynamic subdiv and turn on dynamic subdiv, oh, looky, we got this little guy. If we turn this off, we can actually give this just a little bit of resolution if we wanted to. You know, you can add stuff, but nonetheless, we have this. You can turn off smoothing and just keep it like that if you want. Well, down here we have micropoly. If I turn this on, this is single-sided geometry, but now if I wanted to turn this into some sort of like chain or something, so let's just say knit, there we go, I got this guy. Perfect here. Now I want to move this around and stuff like that. Because it's single-sided geometry, right, I could start to deform this a little bit like this, and what it's going to do is it's going to move around, and it's just literally the plane of the necklace itself. Like it's just this. So as long as these don't get deformed, then this is going to move this way. This also works with the dynamic simulation. So let's turn the floor grid on, and then let's come down here. Let's open up dynamics at this point, and then let's do we don't need to do collision volume, inflate, whatever. Let's do 10. Let's do this to 2. Let's go ahead and just run this. So see, now this absolutely stops right in its tracks because it's single-sided geometry. And you can even see here, if I turn Z modeler on, it's just literally focused on each one of those things. It's not really deforming in any way, shape, or form. So this is a great way to kind of help preserve that when you're doing things like necklaces or any type of thing that you need to remain a little bit solid, because again, all I need to do is take the move brush, and the only way these will get deformed in its immediate would be if you deform the quads themselves. But this could be a really cool way. So again, you just come this up here. Again, I can just like boom, runs down. As soon as it hits something, it'll stop for you, and then you can move that however you need to. So that's something you can also use real quick. You can also turn around and use something like bend curve or even like bend arc at this point, right? And you can start moving some of the stuff around, and it's just you're only deforming these actual quads in and of itself because it's micropoly. So it helps retain the shape a lot better. And then once you're done with that kind of bending and moving, right? Let's say now you're kind of done with that, then you can go ahead and apply that. And then that would become real topology once you're done with it. But that's one way you could do it. But yes, it's not the best. It's not always the best case scenario for what you're specifically asking. But this is one approach you could take. Let's see. I might have moved away from the mic a little bit. Let's see, but bending the planes deforms them, and the micropoly over is deformed, cause the original polys are stretching. Yes, you're going to stretch it. It is a destructive process, 100%. It is a destructive process, but that's some ways that you can minimize that, and you can even edit the quads themselves before continuing to move forward, because again, you can just come in here. Let's say you did stretch one, so let's do this as an example. I can kind of stretch this, right? And if I turn that micropoly back on, so turn this back on, now it's super stretched, right? And that's because it's the plane is driving the micropoly. So even if you do end up stretching some stuff, what you could do is you can turn around and you can kind of clean that up a little bit. Again, it is a destructive process. It's not the best solution, but in the meantime, this could be something that you could, quote, do in order to keep things as a little bit cleaner in that process when you're building stuff like necklaces. Oh, no, you're totally fine. Absolutely. No, the stream's also called AMA. Ask me anything. So you guys are doing really good. I like the questions. So, okay. We do have just a few minutes, so let's go ahead and start the posing process of this guy. So we can just go ahead and start doing this. This is where I'm going to go ahead, And there's a couple of processes. So again, now with this is also some use cases in which some people decide, oh, I need to ZRemesh in order to pose him because because Dynamesh, for example, Dynamesh is now quote not great for posing, which is so accurate. So here, this is where you'll get another feature coming in. And for this is where we're going to go to geometry and we're going to go into proxy pose. Now, proxy pose is going to allow me to pose him a lot more efficiently while not losing out on my Dynamesh. So if I go to proxy pose and I go to my size reduction, I can go ahead and find something that makes sense. So here I'm going to go, it's always dependent on the mesh. There's no ideal number depending on how dense something is. So, but here I'm going to go like 6, 7, 8-ish percentage, say something like that. And now we're going to break symmetry at this point. And now we're going to go ahead and start posing them. I'm going to turn my gizmo up. I'm going to go ahead and maybe find something like this. Let's go like this. Maybe not that way. That's fine. Let's go ahead and just mask off his arm. It's totally good. Okay, great. A little bit of an arm mask off. Now this arm is pulled back. His whole character is kind of pulled back. So instead of just moving the arms, let's actually lead from the torso. So we're going to rotate him just a little bit. There we go. Kind of straighten that out. Very good. And now we're going to go ahead and mask this section off. Again, very low resolution at this point, but that's okay. All right, we're going to bring this up because his arm in the reference is up. And also, too, think of this is like posing tips is essentially try to pose from the center of the joint. So here at this point, I'm going to say something like this would be pretty good. He's pulling back. I'm going to soften this even more so, right? Because when we move our bodies, there's a lot going on, especially up here in the anatomy. Your scapula is like floating. You have so much going on with your muscle and bone structure. So we don't just move a single joint. Things that are connected move with it. And again, I don't really care how nasty this looks. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this back because we're going to drive his elbow back. He's kind of lunging at Link, and Link jumped on him. So that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to do something like this. Kind of pull that back. So now that pec's really being pulled. And then we're going to go ahead and also bend his elbow here. Now, the shoulder, when you move, that's more of a soft deformation. But when I bend my elbow, that's more of a harder deformation. So I'm going to not soften the mask as much, if at all. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this here. There we go. Getting something this way. And also, maybe I'm going to unmask this part again. So do something like that. Soften this even more so. Because maybe what I need to do is actually bring this up. So I'm going to kind of rotate and pull this up a bit. There we go. Yeah, say something like that. That's fine. I don't really care how nasty this looks right here. Whatever, we're going to fix that. We're going to be sculpting him. And then here, right, we're going to go ahead and get his hand. Same thing with his hand. I'm not going to really soften that. There's no point in doing that. Okay, we're going to just kind of move this here. We're going to pull this up. He's kind of more lunging in this way. Yeah, maybe that's not the right location for that. So let's mask off even further. Make sure it's kind of in the middle. We're just going to go up a little bit. Maybe rotate a bit. We'll get the fingers and stuff going later. There we go. Say something like this. That's fine for now. We need to fix the hand. We're just going to go with the base shape first. And also, too, this may not be... bent enough. So we can bend that even more so. And now let's get the, instead of starting with the fingers now, let's go with the other arm. There we go. So we're going to mask this guy off here. Now he's lunging forward, which means he's rolling back one section and his shoulder needs to come up. So again, let's really soften this. Okay, let's go ahead and tap right here. Let's just kind of put that in the middle, somewhere where it makes sense on the joint. Now we're gonna just pull this up. We really need to rotate this forward. And I'm gonna tell you guys, there is no shame in breaking your mesh. Okay, it needs to happen. We're posing. Let's get in here. Soften that even more. Let's get more of that in there. It's totally fine. He's also sand, so it's all good. Yeah, we really want that expression. Let's pull that up even more. The thing is that he's currently looking down. So let's get his head up. Again, that's going to be a soft motion too. He needs a point of where is he looking? He's looking up. So let's get him looking up. There we go. And not only is he looking up, but we're going to move his elbow a bit. He's going to be looking right over here. Because he's actually, it's like a straight lunge. His arm's a little bent because I sculpted it that way. So that's fine. Let's get this going here. We are going to deform that just a bit. It's fine. Let's get that right there. Let's go ahead and rotate that. Yeah. Now this is where I'm going to go ahead and take the move brush. We're going to start doing some stuff here because I can sculpt on this. It's not just for moving. Proxy pose doesn't let me actually turn around and start sculpting on it too. I can smooth things out, kind of smooth, relax things, stretch his lat, pectoral out. There we go. Again, starting these projects, they're going to look really rough in the beginning, but that's okay. We're just getting the main feel of this guy going. And this, yeah, that's fine. Let's see. We can even start, let's make him look a little bit more sand-like in his flow. So it's like he's coming out of something. We'll end up making a pseudo base out the gate. Now, one thing we have to keep in mind, making anything into a statue, there's a focal point, right? So Link's going to need to be the focal point. So we don't want to take away from that. So we're going to need to also kind of understand that when we put him on there, we don't want him too small or too big. We need him to be a good fit. So we're going to need to guide the viewer of the statue, whoever's going to be looking at this thing, we're going to need to kind of guide that. So we need to make sure that our line of sight is correct. So, and we'll continue working on this next week. Most likely I'll be doing some stuff offline. I've been really enjoying the process of getting in and doing a fun little project, but I'll walk you guys through what I've done in the meantime. Okay, here we go. Just kind of getting the base shape in there. It's looking pretty good. Got a few more minutes. Oh, hey, thank you. Welcome in. What time is it in Argentina? Okay. And for those of you who are coming in, this is actually what we're working on. I'm a huge link to a past type guy. So this is actually something that we're working on. So we're getting this kind of locked in a little bit. I can leave that up for a second. It just definitely blocks. Okay. So this is obviously a little funny here. Let's actually shrink this down just a bit. There we go. Just put that there. There we go. That's probably more helpful. Okay. 4 p.m. 3 to 4 p.m. Nice. Okay. Now, proxy pose, we're not going to get all the detail and stuff that we want out of there. But now that we got at least something that's, there, let's fine tune the rest of things. Now, here's the cool part about the body, or at least the human body, is that, the arms rotate a little bit. So I need to kind of put this in the center a little bit. And then I could soften this transition, and then we can rotate that. There we go. Again, that hand is kind of lunging outwards. So let's do this guy. There we go. I'm going to soften this just a little bit. Come in. There we go. Now we can start working on some of that posed movement just a bit. There we go. This is where we can start breaking things. So we can come in. Well, we already are breaking things, but let's kind of get this in here. Let's rotate these hands down a bit. And with posing, again, you want to make sure that the pose itself makes sense. There we go. Drop that down. So we could still kind of pull that out a little bit. This is where a proxy pose for me is like super cool. Because again, I can keep this in Dynamesh form because I'm still working on them. There we go. Now what we could do, this is where Dynamesh is kind of king in my opinion. I could pose the one hand and then chop off the other and then re-weld the posed hand. I could chop them off and then kind of, you know, get that a little bit different. So there's some cool stuff we could do. And what we might end up realizing, this is why we put the fingernails in, because you know, there might be a point where we realize we kind of broke it a little too far in this stage, and if we do, that's okay. We'll just fix it. No, not scale. Just kind of rotate there. Let's go ahead. Somewhere around here should be the natural bend. And we'll fix the rest of this. We'll move stuff around. I'm going to move the pinky first, because I feel like that's going to be easier. Oh, you're from Argentina too? Awesome, man. I feel like I didn't know that. Sorry, man. How you doing? Thanks, man. Super nice having you guys here. How's it going, Nico? How you been? Proxy pose is kind of a mystery to me. It's like a cage hiding the higher mesh. Move the mounts. You're all from Argentina. That's awesome, man. Welcome. Sorry, that took me off, dude. You're from Argentina too. Hey-o. Awesome. Welcome. I've never been. I would love to go to Argentina. Sorry, yeah. Anyway, moving the hidden amount of vertices to take a good amount of time. Yeah, so proxy pose is exactly, you're correct. It is a cage. And it's a cage that, it's a proxy cage that fully remembers where everything is at. That's the whole idea of it. And so I'm using it for like posing and stuff like that, because it allows me to hold and preserve the details of the of my Dynamesh, and so it just makes it a little bit easier. There you go. So yeah, so it's just that, it's a proxy cage, which then allows you to just have the ability to keep the detail that you have in there. That's it. So you can also do other things with proxy pose. You can keep quote the you can actually do pose tests. Like you can create a proxy cage, duplicate that multiple times, and then in doing so, you can then keep the you can test out different poses, and then you can try different things, and then you can switch between the two, which is kind of nice. So there's little things like that that you can end up doing. Okay. Let's actually pull this back a little bit. So I do a lot of going back and forth with my posing. Because again, I like to kind of, I'm more about the expression. I don't care about the mesh tearing right now as much as I do care about it looking and feeling correct. That's more important. Okay. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. Dynamesh was still active. Habits. Habits die hard. Okay. So let's stop here for this right here. So we got this main lunge right here. So he's doing that. That's cool. Let's go ahead and turn off proxy pose. And now you can see here that I just got my Dynamesh model back and stuff like that. And then I can see where everything is at. Fingernails are at least in a rough, decent spot, but we need, pardon me, we need to actually clean up some stuff. So, and then this is where I'm going to kind of make the same pose with my hand as much as I can, and then move some stuff around and see what ends up making sense. And then if I wanted to, once I get this pose done, this is what I mean too. We're now asymmetrical, right? So we could actually come through here and I could easily chop this off. And then I can come in and grab this guy. For example, I can just polygroup him and I can work on this and then I can duplicate that once it's done. Or I could just mask that off. But that's extremely fast, yeah. Yeah, it's designed for the speed functionality of it. We definitely need to clean it up though, because it is rough at the moment. Okay, get a little bit of that in there. There we go. This is where we're going to start adding some things, clean it up. I'm not going to be doing too much detail though. That's the important part. The important part here is knowing do not add too much detail. Right, we want to make sure that we're just locking in the things. So for example, I'm going to carve this part in of his wrist because there is a little bit of a space right here because of the way that the body should be moving. Okay, there's also a little wrist bone right about here. There you go, say something like that. That makes sense. Again, he's a sand creature, so it's more magic that's forming him. So we don't need to get too crazy on all the detail. But we're just pushing this thing. Okay, so he's kind of more... not super in love with it, but it's okay because we are going to be wrapping up here in a bit. But something you could do too, I'm going to clean this up. This is the idea of it. Again, we have the link over here blocked out very simplistically. So for those who are just joining, we have this guy here, but we're going to be moving. Where is it? There it is. We're going to be, again, positioning him and lunging him here. Before we wrap it up, let's go ahead and hit save on this. And just to get an idea of what I would like to see happen, let's go ahead and grab a cylinder. Okay, let's just blow this up like this. Just turn this on here. I'm just going to get a simple base down because he's going to be a statue. we're not going to worry about any details of the base, but I like to put a temporary base down. So I'm going to say delete loops to get rid of all the unnecessaries. And this is just going to be more for like how I expect to see this, or at least an idea that I want to see. Let's go ahead and do polygroups. And let's group by normals. Let's go to Q mesh. Sorry, let's go to inset. Under my polygroup actions. Inset, there we go. All gonna do something like this. There we go. And now we're gonna go to Q mesh polygroup all. Gonna bring this down a little bit. And I'm just tapping Alt to get a different polygroup. So I could do this a few times. And then from here, if I solo this out, pardon me, I'm going to just go ahead and Control-Shift-D, duplicate that. I'm going to grab this guy, and I'm going to go ahead and delete hidden. So let's go to Geometry, Modify Topology, delete hidden. Now let's just go Q-Mesh again. This is the same size, so this is going to kind of come in like this. And he's a sand creature, so he's coming out of the sand. So let's do this. I'm going to go ahead and go Insert, Multiple Edge Loops, and we'll keep the groups. We don't really care too much about that. I'm going to come and say something like this. This is going to support what I would like to have happen. There we go. Say something like this. Now what I could do is I could subdivide a few times. So that edge loop's now going around in circles. And if I come at this from the top and I go to my standard, let's do transform, activate symmetry on the y-axis here with radial symmetry. So now I can kind of add in just a little bit of like maybe a sand effect. Something that's just going to represent that he's coming out of something. All right, maybe at this point, clay buildup and start building up areas that he would probably be coming out of. Say something like this. There we go. I'll smooth that down. There, that kind of gives me that effect of what's happening here while giving me some sort of ultimate-like base, you know? Do something like this, and then let's shrink that just a teeny bit. And then here, he's kind of popping out of there. That's fine. So we could just clip that off. And now we have this guy coming in. So we need to clean him up. That's going to take a little bit of time. But ultimately here, something to keep in mind, and then I'm going to kind of leave you guys, is we need to rebuild the anatomy. And something that's going to help me keep that line of sight is putting in guidelines for how a spine should necessarily be. So here's his head, which means he has this, if he had a skull, it'd be right here. So we need to find the center of his mass because everything's going to be pulled off of that. So I'm going to have this point here. This is clearly like this area right in this section is where that shoulder is. So we need to identify this, his triceps over here, coming in at this point. So we have tricep area. While, again, he's a sand creature, we got our bicep area. What we want to do is kind of come in and just quickly identify the proper body and the proper proportion of things and how things ultimately end up connecting. And this is just, I have so many accrochets at home, like just sitting on the floor and stuff. So for me, like, you know, just going to come in and just identify some of these parts real quick just to get a sense. So when I come back to this at some point, you know, it's going to kind of help me understand where things are living and what needs to be corrected. And if I come over here at this point, we got a stretch of the pec. Okay, another thing here, there's a stretch this way. This is stretching more in this direction, stretching more upwards. We got our lats coming in, so that's reaching around in this section. All right, we have our rib cage. This lat is being just pulled back. There we go. So that's being pulled back in that direction, kind of coming through. Again, he's a sand creature, but now you can start seeing like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really stretched out in this case here. All right, so we need to, this is bunched up. So his scapula, if he had one, would be right about here-ish. And now this is being pulled in. Okay, so little areas of identifying what makes sense needs to now be addressed anytime you have that. So little things like this is always going to be something to kind of just like identify a bit. If you could do this, if you can come through and kind of hit some of this points up, then it's going to be really helpful for you. There we go. So, and again, he's a sand creature, but I'm using human anatomy because his design is based off of that bipod kind of character. So this is going to kind of help bring things to realism in that design element. So quickly just roughing. I'm not worried about too much. A little bit of mass to that tricep right there. Just a visual guide for me on how things should be. And again, actually this bicep, he's being pulled back, so that's gonna get a little bit bigger, so he might be a little beefier here. There we go. Okay, this little intersection right here. So this is an insertion point, right in that point. This part right up here is actually going to get puffy because that's another connection point to the brachialis. Boom, right there. Boom, sounds good. Okay, these muscles come this way. Boom. So this gives me a little bit more idea of how it should be. There we go. Yeah, say something like that. And then we can figure out the rest. And we can see, you know, if this right here just needs to be pulled up a little bit more. Maybe we broke. Let's get that move infinite. Let's just pull that elbow in a little bit more. This arm is stretched. So that's going to be actually, the bicep's going to be stretched, not going to be puffy like that. All right, stretch that bicep out. He's not Hercules at this point. There we go. Say something like this. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, we'll add the fat pads and stuff and turn them into sand, but this one is going to be a little bit bigger though, because this is more contracted, so this makes more sense to be pulled in like that. And this would actually be more rounded. So see right here, boom. So this would be more rounded in this case, because when you bend your arm like that, you're rounding out the body in that sense. So that going like that. And this is actually probably too low. We probably need to tilt this up. So boom. Actually, I just identified that this pose is a little weird. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and soften that just a bit. Let's put this here. You can actually rotate this down just a bit more and maybe pull that back even further. Yeah, let's let that elbow drive down just a bit. Oh yeah, that's feeling a little bit more. That's feeling a little bit better. Still needs some work. Proxy pose. Boom. Done. Donezo. Okay, cool. So now we're going to go ahead and save. And boom, there you go. Let's see. Can you dynamically change the amount of points of radial symmetry you use to reduce repetition? So while the tool you active. No, not necessarily. You can activate multiple axes, but through this approach, not necessarily, because it is doing a uniform thing. So if I go into transform, activate symmetry, the idea is to keep things symmetrical. So yeah, you have a radial count. You can engage how much and how little, but it's going to be even spaced for the most part. So through this process, this is going to be even spaced. There are other processes that are more like array mesh. Even array mesh is more uniform. So it's gonna try to evenly space things out as much as possible. But the idea is just get something in there quickly and then come through, and then you can clean up as you need. So, alrighty, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you all for hanging out. This is super fun. This is where we got so far as like getting this kind of sand monster in place. You know what? He's actually a little too tall. There you go. Yeah, I think that's even cooler. Okay, cool. Anyway, last decision. But thank you guys so much for being a part of this. Hopefully next week as well, same time, same bat channel. So if you guys have want to come back and hang out, ask more questions, or see the process of the statue come to life, definitely stop on by. Please don't forget to subscribe, all that good stuff, because it's not just me on this channel. There's actually a ton of artists that come through, all with different processes, all with different walks of life. and just being able to use ZBrush at a professional level is, you know, the goal here is to just kind of help connect with everybody. So definitely make sure that you're in tune with it, and we'll talk to you guys later. So with that, peace out. Bye, 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 bye.